Hi everyone, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. I've got a special guest for you today talking about productivity. Nigel Creaser, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast.
Thank you, it's good to be back.
Yeah, your second time. One of only a few that have been on twice.
I'm just annoying and persistent, probably.
So for the uninitiated, who are you?
So I'm Nigel Creaser. I'm a project manager, and that's my main profession. I do a few other things. I've got my own podcast, the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast. It's a mouthful, but they really focused on helping project managers and different angles of project management and getting behind some of the background of the project managers as well, understanding where they come from and their backstory, because it's all quite interesting how people end up in that career.
Yeah.
And I write a couple of books on project management. There were Mickey takes really of the whole career. And last time I came here, I was on talking about Alexa, which is a bit of a hobby. And I've kind of started scribbling some stuff about productivity in a book. Someone on my podcast, we were talking about productivity, and I remembered I was doing a blog post / book idea from way back, and really it was just a bunch of ideas that I've used in my career as a project manager, now coming up to 25 years nearly in that industry. And before that I was working as an accountant, and gradually got
We've all been there. I used to be an accountant as well.
Yeah. I know. I used to introduce myself as a failed accountant, but I've tried to change my mentality on that, because I didn't do all the exams, but just jumped ship into IT. So that's kind of me. I've delivered projects and programs for a multitude of different companies, varying sizes from little pieces to multi-million-pound projects. And I've always kind of got a thing where there's never enough time in a day to do everything.
Sure.
And it's about how to, all these ideas are really ideas to try and help me, or they have helped me get out of the office maybe half an hour earlier, maybe an hour earlier, at different times.
For dinner. Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. And I do talk about that key, because I think having talked to someone about this and it rekindled the idea, a lot of these tips I've shared with colleagues and said, right, here, I'll do that. Or hacks, as I've called them. I had a big discussion with myself whether I was going to go for hacks or tips.
Yeah.
And so I asked LinkedIn to tell me which to go for. So my LinkedIn followers told me which.
We struggle with that because a lot of people use hacks at the moment. Hacks is a bit of a buzzword.
Yeah.
But tips sounds a bit light.
Yeah.
Tips sound like the kind of advice someone gives you when they don't want you to know their secrets. So like where a hack feels a bit more heavyweight. But we've never we're doing something at the moment where every time we talk to people, we want to give them a hack or a tip, and we're struggling to brand what that is. So.
Yeah, it's a because I think there is a I know from a British point of view, it's the hack is a little bit of a
negative,
a bit negative, and I suppose it is. It's but then if you look in the IT industry, you got hackathons and you're hacking and you're trying to it kind of has a shortcut as well, but shortcuts isn't quite right either. And I think it's I settled with I'll ask LinkedIn other people's opinions and see what that happened, and they liked hacks, so I went with that.
Yeah, it's better.
But I've still argued with myself since then as well.
It's definitely better than nuggets. So
that's not going to work, is it?
Yes.
Hopefully people will find it useful. As I said, I shared with colleagues, and every time I share with colleagues, it's like, or people who work for me, or even customers before now, and said, right, well, this is what I do. The one that triggers mainly is around using Outlook rules. So using Microsoft Outlook, most people use Outlook one way or another, and there's a capability in it to do automations. So it's simple, it's just automation type stuff. And the one that I did I can't think how many years ago now, was to shift anything that was copied to me. So the CC carbon copy, for people who don't know what that originally meant, and people who haven't got as grey a hair as me probably don't know that the reason was it was a piece of carbon paper that was stuck in between when it was typed, and then you type up the front and that would duplicate onto however many triplicate copies or whatever, and that would be the one you keep in your file or whatever, or you'd send to someone to copy. And 9 times out of 10, if someone's copied you on an email, they don't need you to action it. It's more than 9 times out of 10. Or if they do need you to action it, they should be asking you to do it. And so I started, and it wasn't my idea, but I got it from somewhere and started doing it and pushing it to a separate folder under my inbox.
Yeah.
And I just push anybody who copies an email onto me now. I set up an automation, it pushes it into there. You can put exceptions in. So I put the odd exception in, like key customers, the boss, family members, or something like that, if that's the situation you're in. And you just pile them out there. And that's the one I usually have a conversation with most people, because it's evident to other people I'm not reading stuff they're copying me in, or I tell them I'm not going to read it if you copy me. If you want me to read it, send it to me. Yeah. And quite often I do that and then sit with someone, show them how to do it, and then they click the button and joy comes across their face as 200 emails go out of their inbox and drop into the CC folder, and they go, oh, that's reduced that a lot. That's good. And then it's then getting the discipline, a little bit like what we were talking about earlier, of not looking in that folder.
Yeah.
Except for, or if you're going to look in that folder, you only look in it to glance in case you to do a bit of a catch. But
so I've added to my automation to mark them all as red as well.
Yeah.
And it stops me from looking.
Yeah, and that's something that I haven't done. And I keep thinking I need to do that. And then my little, my inner chimp, as Steve Peters would be talking about, is sitting there going, I don't know. I feel a bit uncomfortable. And most people, when I talk to this, feel quite uncomfortable. It's like, I've got to read every email that gets sent to me. And it's kind of like, that's one way to look at it. And the thing that I urge people, if people read the book or don't and just hear this, if they just do this one thing, I think it saves so much of their time, is that if you've got to prioritize your email. When you get an email, you have limited amounts of data. You have, who's it from? Has it got an attachment? Do they think it's important? Have they put a due date on it? What's the title of it? And how big is it maybe? And none of that data, because even the title, what's in the email may not be what's in the title, because quite often emails will go off onto a different conversation and no one changes the title and things like that. So all of that data that's on there is either useless or misleading.
Yeah.
So, but that's how we make a decision on whether to read that first rather than one below it or the one of it. So quite often people end up going, well, it's from the boss, I'll read them first. And then you jump into it and you go, right, teaspoons. Someone needs to sort out not taking teaspoons and wash up the teaspoons or whatever. And you're kind of like, oh, I didn't need that, but it was from the boss. And that's how you prioritized it. And it's kind of like, yeah, probably not the best use of your time at that point. So by doing it, you are taking ownership and control of how you're prioritizing it. Yeah. And that's the one that I just think, yeah, and the first time I did it was amazing for me. Set it up, off it ran, and end of the day, I stopped myself looking. Quite difficult, but I did manage to stop myself looking by then until the end of the day. Had a look at the end of the day, and I saw this big raft of emails, 20 or so emails, conversation back and two. Oh God, what's this? I'll have a look at the top one. I had a look at it. I said, great, sorted. Okay, or something akin to that. And all right, don't have to do anything. I wonder what it was. And I scrolled through the email conversation and realized that the team had all the back and two conversations. And I looked at the beginning of it and I thought, if I'd seen that clear on its own,
you'd have jumped in it.
Yeah. And I'd have lost 2 hours. And the kind of thing I look at is, if you can save that time and you can spend that hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, by someone else doing it, and you can focus then on your priorities for whatever they are within your role. Your team's better than you because there's more of them and they know more stuff usually.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to admit sometimes. And I kind of sat there, and that was a little bit on it, a little bit that sweetened the story was there. Well, if I'd got involved, it probably got sorted a bit quicker. But I'm not sure.
That's your chimp again.
That's my chimp, yeah. Just sitting there going, yeah. Let's just stroke you, make you feel better. And obviously, nobody knows whether it would or wouldn't with that scenario. And actually, even if it would, it probably wouldn't. The amount of effort I would have taken to being involved in it to speed it up wouldn't have benefited the organisation.
Yes, so we have.
Your pride.
Yeah. I was going to say we have in our organisation £10 tasks, £100 tasks, and £1,000 tasks. Now, chances are I can do some of the £10 and £100 tasks faster than junior members of staff because I had to be able to do £1,000 tasks.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing them, I'm stopping myself from being able to do the big tasks. And so it's like we've taken your idea to the extreme. So if I'm CC'd on an email and I'm the only CC, that goes in one folder. If I'm CC'd on an email and I'm part of multiple recipients, that goes in a different folder because immediately there's different priorities there. If I'm one of 10, doesn't matter. If I'm one of 2, sometimes that might be a client or something that wants me to be aware of something. And then other rules I've got on my inbox, anything that says the word invoice, that just goes straight to accounts. There's absolutely no point in that coming to me. And then I've got other rules as well. I think we've started to do automations by client name as well. So they go into different folders because, rightly or wrongly, we've all got projects that take priority over other projects. And
well, they will do because you'll have some of them that you're doing a piece of work that's a 6-month piece of work for them. When someone else is, you've got some campaign that's launching in the next day, and do you know what I mean? And actually, those need different priorities, don't they? And you can get and it's I talk about other ways of doing stuff, and that it goes into that, and you can use with me anything that's got expenses in it, anything that's to do with the sort of comms team, anything to do with meeting invites. Meeting invites is a great example because it's all about timeliness. If another thing I talk about is about scheduling your email and only do email at certain times. If you're trying to get that email done and then you're looking at other stuff later, so you schedule when you're going to do your expenses claims, say. So when people are sending you expense claims, you've got to review them, approve them, and timesheets and all that stuff. You're on the same system. So you log on, say you've got 10 or 15 people's expenses to come in, you log on to that system, you do their expenses. Because you're on that system already, and you're in the, I remember how this thing works now, they've changed that, and you get into that flow state a little bit, and you go bang, 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 deal with all those expenses. Whereas if you're doing piecemeal, when you see them on the thing, you've got, there's the email, it's his expenses, click, jump, goes to the machine, logs in or auto logs in, whatever, then you go find it, and you're using more time for all of those transactions. And there's so many things that when you start looking at what you get in your emails and start really analyzing them and going, I need a rule for that. Because once you start with one rule, the CC is the starter for me, because then it gives you some time to get to wheat from the chaff sort of thing. And I think it's then you can start really powering through it and gradually over time improve it and get rid of them. Sometimes you just want to get rid of them because they're not actually of any use. But that's one of so that was the main thing that I wanted to share. And talking to people, I'll be talking to one person or 2 people about it, and I kind of thought everyone I'd done this with has gone, that's brilliant, thank you, or I'll tell so and so. And I thought, let's share it. And I'm not I wouldn't mind making the odd quid with everyone if I can get one out there, but it's more about kind of, well, let's help people be more efficient and be better at it. But I'm not completely altruistic. I'll admit that.
A little bit of cash would be fine.
It'd be nice. If you pay for something.
So I think for project managers, directors, team leaders, your team's firing on all cylinders when you no longer have to worry about looking at your email. I think that's a real key thing. So putting these rules in place isn't so much you saying, I'm too important to read that, or I don't need to be involved in this anymore. It's a trust exercise as well. It's about, well, I've assembled this team, and if they can't handle this, then the issue is in the training of the team, not in my inbox.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need, and part of our job is to coach people. So I think that your £10, £100 and £1,000, £10,000, hundreds of £1,000 ideas, that concept of it is kind of one of the things where you start thinking about. I heard it on a podcast called Manager Tools, which not to stop people listening to mine or your podcast. It's a fantastic podcast. They do two. One's called Manager, one's called Career Tools, and it's all about. They're just completely geek out on management, even to the point of one of their episodes is about talking to someone who has bad body odor, and they think about the job of a manager to the level of everything.
I need to listen to that. We genuinely have that problem in our business. They don't work for us anymore, so it's an easy one to talk about on the podcast, but so difficult to manage.
Yeah, well, the thing is there's two things. One is the on that one, they said, if it was you, so talking about it's uncomfortable conversation to have with someone, isn't it? You'd avoid it as an individual because it doesn't feel very nice. But if it was you and no one was telling you that you had body odor, you don't know yourself, do you? So you'd want someone to tell you if that was the case. And that's their basic thing. They say, well, if it was you, you'd want to know. So apply that to everybody else, because most other people are similar. But that was a bit of an aside. But again, they cover the whole gamut of everything. And then the bit that I thought that I picked up on was the fact that they said, as a manager, our job is to look after the money of an organization, and part of task allocation, part of what you're doing is to make sure that the person who can do the job to an appropriate level is cheapest is the wrong word, but the most, the lowest grade person that could do it effectively, then you should get them to do it, because your organization's money, you're meant to maximize the use of it. And if you're there and you're influencing £200,000 of cost every month, and you can make a 10% saving by sitting there and doing strategy and doing something like that, rather than, as you say, you sit there doing a spreadsheet that someone in the team could do who hasn't learned how to do it and maybe they're not as whizzy with Excel and can't make it quite as pretty as you can do. I'm talking to myself here. It's my thing of, if I get a chance to do an Excel spreadsheet, I kind of go, oh yeah, I quite like that. It's easy for me to get lost. But actually, most of the time I should be saying, one of the team, can you do that? And then I can do what I've got to do. And it's about being effective, and that's part of our job. And even more than that, it's about being effective with our time. Not just, it's easy to manage other people, but it's about your own time as well. So that every penny that you're getting paid by your organization, you've kind of got to go, right, how should I spend this time that the organization's bought from me?
Yeah.
Not just, oh, I'll do this because it's easier for me to do. Because it's that leverage thing, isn't it? If you can spend, if it takes you 2 hours to do, and you can give it to someone else, and it takes you 15 minutes or half an hour to coach them how to do it and then correct them when they come back to you, and they take 2 days to do it, but as long as it meets the timescales and the quality you need in those 2 days, it doesn't matter that it took longer. If it works out that you can spend those 2 hours pitching to a new customer, solving a major problem somewhere else, and that's where you've got to do it. And I know that you, as a business owner, you have a different mindset to that as well, because it is, you're the only one who can prioritize that, but sometimes you can get lost in it, can't you? And again, listening to your podcast, so I'm going to throw back at you talking about not just because you don't like it, washing cars and mowing the lawns and things like that, or whatever, about you pay people to do those things because your time you can spend doing other things.
Yeah.
And the same in
Yeah,
your
it's
business.
the value proposition, the value exchange. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't listened to that episode, Andy talks about washing his car, and I talk about the house cleaner.
That's it. Yeah.
I can go home. I can make sure I finish work at 5, so I can get home and make sure the house is tidy before my wife gets home. I could do that. Or is it better to spend an extra hour at work where potentially I generate £2,000 for the business and pay someone £15 to spruce up the house?
Yeah.
That's not to say, I really struggle with this point because I've got a chip on my shoulder from being from a working class background. So I'm like,
I know what you mean.
my chimp is hammering me for this attitude.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a disservice to not just my business, but to my wife, to my household, to my family, if I choose to go the other route. The sort of the other way of looking at it is, if you really like doing something and it's really good for helping you decompress after a day at work, or really good at helping you be more present, then it has way more value, and so then the decision is different. So like, I like washing my car, so the value exchange is much higher then. If washing my car makes me feel calm and makes me a better husband, that time well spent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of the crux of that episode. So what would be kind of someone maybe new to project management, new to leadership? What would be the telltale signs for them that productivity isn't where it needs to be?
For me, and it's one that I've gone through, is you either don't know, or you're not meeting your objectives.
Yeah.
So, and I say that it's kind of, you've got your project delivery, and that might be fine, but it's way above that, and the same with your management. And I think the thing is it's the lunches for wimps kind of attitude that still perpetuates a little bit. And if you're not taking a break at lunchtime because you're too busy, to me, that means one of two things: either you're completely overloaded and therefore that is ineffective, or you're not managing your time, which means that you can't manage your time, you're managing your priorities ineffectively. And either of those are there. And I've done it myself, where I've kind of sat there, you're eating lunch at your desk, you're on calls, you're on and you're doing the conversation I've had before. I'll do my real job when I get home tonight. Yeah. If you're saying, well, my day job I'm doing later, so what's all this? If this stuff isn't in your mind, your day job, what is it, and who's deciding you're doing it? And there's so many situations where we hand over our attention and our diary essentially to other people without realizing it.
Yeah.
And that's because we don't put this control and strain in there. For example, what I've been doing lately, I have my diary blocked out with do not book lunch unless you spoke to me first. Now it doesn't stop people booking over it, but what it does do, it gives me that mandate to say, well, I'm not available then, sorry, can you reschedule? It gives me flexibility. I can flex it if I want to, but it's kind of, this is when I'm not available and I need to re-energize, and I know that when I have a proper break, I'm better in the afternoon. I can feel it. Now, maybe it's an age thing, but
it's not. It's not.
It's because what I found is
that team. I see it in our team.
Yeah. Well, you can hammer yourself sometimes, and you can keep going. You can keep going for a period of time sometimes, but it just catches up on you. And it's that whole, everyone talks about that 3 o'clock dip in the afternoon. And that's because half the time we've not had that. I know there's some sort of sleep things that relate to it as well, but I think not having a good energizing break. So if you get up and go for a walk, I find I'm better. If I go for a run, sometimes I manage to fit in, I'll come back in the afternoon, I've got loads more energy, and I work better. And you, therefore, you're more effective. And there's a balance in effective and efficient. So you can be really efficient, but if you're ineffective as well, it's not much use. But I think those sort of things, those triggers pop up. And I've put a section in the book about remote working, because I couldn't not with what we've all gone through and where we all are now, and the fact that I believe wholeheartedly that we're going to go forward with that sort of approach. The thing I found, and I've talked about my mental health before, and I've talked about it on my podcast, is that I got myself into a situation where I was back-to-back meetings, not taking proper breaks. So I wasn't even taking like the good medicine that I had kind of before. I wasn't even following what I've done before. I'd let it, because that's the point I'm making. This is it's like a fitness program. Productivity for me, it's like a fitness program or a diet or anything that you're trying to change in your lifestyle. You fall off the wagon. You'll do this, you'll be brilliant, you'll be really good at only doing this then or only doing that, and then it creeps back in, because we're talking about that chimp in the back of your head. And for those who don't know the chimp that we're talking about, I don't know if you've talked about it on the podcast, there's a book by a guy called Steve Peters, and it's about the way your inner mind works. It's a really good concept, and we all have that little voice in our head chatting to us, telling us we should or shouldn't do something.
And he was the psychologist for British Cycling and Ronnie O'Sullivan, like that. So.
Yeah. He's and it's a really, really good. Actually, I read it and then listened to it on Audible, and I found listening to it on Audible, you picked up different things as well. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I'll do that.
Yeah. And I've lost my train there. Where was I going?
It's your diary and time.
Yeah. So if you don't manage to keep these different disciplines going, like I didn't do with my diary, well, you start again. You don't beat yourself up about it. It's kind of you just got to start again with it. And so I'd let myself go, and now I'm being much more disciplined. But I found that my days remote working, my days were getting longer. Even though I wasn't commuting, the fact that I was skipping, it was easier to just pop out of the office or not pop out of the office, and Jodie would pop in and say, "Do you want a drink?" And it's like, "Yeah, all right." And I wouldn't move from this chair, and I'd get a coffee and, "Oh, do you want to something?" And then I might pop out, have some lunch, and then on to another call. And I just found myself constantly in the same position, in the same room, quite often with the headset on. And that just gradually, at start off it was okay, but gradually my energy levels over time just diminished, because I wasn't getting that break. I wasn't just that movement, and I found it really difficult. And so there's some stuff I put in there about that as well.
Yeah. So this is a good way to sort of wrap up the podcast. A bit of debate at the end. So I think remote working's inevitable.
Yes.
I wholeheartedly disagree with it, and I've upset people on LinkedIn with that opinion. But I don't think work is purely about doing your job, and I worry that remote working funnels people into that mindset that it's all I exist for is to do the tasks for my employee until the bell rings at 5 o'clock type thing. And I'm proud that Codebreak is somewhere where people can come and they're surrounded by like-minded people. They can share ideas. They can go for lunch together. They can go for a walk. Yada yada yada. What do you think we do as a society for mental health, for productivity, for sociology, when inevitably 50% of the population is going to be remote working?
I think the way I talk about it and the way I think about it is, and it was early on when we were talking about with my organization about what would we do when everything was back to normal, in quotes, the new normal or whatever. And my view was that we have a policy where you dress for your day. So if you're meeting clients, you're maybe a bit tidier in your normal day, whatever's going on in your day, you dress. And I think it's about being where you need to be to do your job. Now, a point I bring out in there is face-to-face is critical, but it isn't essential all the time. I think it is something that, but we need to, I think we've got to think differently about those face-to-face times. And one of the things I'm saying is, you go into the office, you don't go into the office and sit on email, you don't go into the office and sit on conference calls, you don't go into the office and not talk to any of the people you're working with. You go in there to do collaborative work, you go in there to do relationship building, you go in there to the things that work really well there. Now, I don't believe that, I believe you can do anything remotely. I think you can do it if you're face to face. It's there's you can build stronger bonds, and you can be more effective for some things. But I've been used to managing remote teams. I've got, for example, even the last project I was on, I had one person on the South Coast, two people on the South Coast, different parts of it. One person out in the East Coast, Birmingham, Liverpool, and do you know what I mean? That was my team. In my situation, it was always going to be a remote team. Now, they may have teams that they were working on locally, and it would be different. And I think it does depend on, I think I can see where you're coming from. I think it does depend on industry as well, on what you're doing. Because there's no point driving in to an office if you are going to sit there and not engage with other people, or you sit on a team that aren't part of your team because it's hot desking. Because I used to do that when I used to be a consultant, and I'd go into the one office that I was assigned to, and there'd be no one there who was doing anything I was involved with, and you just kind of occasionally chat to some people. But I think that we've got to be, there is that mental health, the social side of it, the building relationships and things like that. But maybe for me, it's a bit different because I've always worked, well, for a long time, I've worked a good hour away from where my base was. So not the social side of my work is much less than organization where you've got people who are local. And I think and like, I know it's the same where I work now, there's a lot of people who live locally, so there's lots of people who are socialized together, and I think it does, that's the thing, it's that social side of it. But I do think I wonder whether you're going to get the big city scenario is going to start to maybe that it's going to take a long time, and I know that commercially organizations still want that to happen, but you wonder whether the smaller towns like Shrewsbury, like Oswestry, whether those co-working hubs start popping up that are going to be viable and secure, and you can't start that. I think that is something we do need, because for me, if what I'm doing is suitable at the time, I'll go into Oswestry and sit in the lie coffee shop up at the top. They've got Wi-Fi, they've got USB and plugs, and I'll just sit there and work. And that, just because there's other people around, and I do find that's really good for you, because you do need that. And I think it's working out techniques for ourselves. I think we've got to remember as well is everybody is different. There are some people who will absolutely be thriving sat at home, and in the nature of their job are doing amazing and supporting their organization in the right way. And for them, depending on their personal preference, that's the right thing for them. And I think that's the thing you've got to recognize. And it's that personal preference may be a health or a character trait and things, but people can't just lock themselves away. But I also think you can't just turn around to everyone and say, you've got to do it. And it's a new thing we've got to learn how to do. It's as we all do with all these different new things that come in. I think the hardest barrier is going to be where you've got remote, and this has always been a problem, when you've got remote people and you've got a team that are based together, and making sure that remote person is included as well as that team's there. But the advantage it does give you is that remote capability of people who are away can be part of your team, and they wouldn't have been before because they're too far away. And it's going to be a few years before we kind of settle down on where it's going to be, I think. But it's got to be a blend, and I think we'll probably go too far one way. Well, we've had the enforced too far one way, I suppose. It'll come back too far the other way a little bit, and then it's going to yo-yo back into for a while.
Yeah, interesting.
But I think, yeah.
How does someone get hold of your book?
Well, it's out on the 1st of November.
Yep.
It is called, and I keep forgetting what I've called it now because the hacks conversation we were talking about earlier. It's called Project Manager Productivity Hacks, but it's not exclusively for project managers. It's just that I'm a project manager. I don't sort of like pretend to know exactly what other people challenges are in their jobs, but I think I've had enough experience in this one that I think I can say it. It's on Amazon is where it'll be. There will be a paperback and a hardback one. Just waiting for the proofs to come through on the paperback and getting the hardback as well. And at some point, when I've got the time to do it, I'm going to record it for Audible as well, so it will be available on audio. But it's from the 1st of November. It's available on Kindle, so you got Kindle Select. So if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you'll just grab a copy of it on there. And yeah, that's it really. So it's hopefully it'll help a few people.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Great to catch up.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate.